You're listening to Bad Girlfriend Radio. I'm your host, Bree Schmidt. I'm a relationship coach and educator offering advice and insight that is no shame, no sugarcoat, and no BS. Today, I'm talking about attachment. Attachment might sound a bit gross, but really, attachment bonds are just a part of relationships. And I'm really excited to talk about healthy attachment, unhealthy attachment, and attachment styles. I especially love talking about attachment styles and how they influence your behavior and your thoughts. It's like illuminating a huge part of why you are the way that you are. And it can help you determine if you're really compatible with another person or not. Forget astrology, this gets straight to the point. So stick around for this deep dive discussion. I realized while recording this that you may be able to hear some nice rain sounds in the background. After moving to my new home recently, I'm really noticing how noisy my new house is. My neighborhood is such a cute and cozy area in Tokyo, and my street is actually pretty private, but any noise from the wind, the rain, the neighbors, the mail person coming on their motorbike, all of these sounds make an appearance sometimes, so just be aware. Anyway, I'm really into attachment theory, and when I was back in college, when I was majoring in sexuality studies and spending a lot of my free time researching about relationships, I stumbled upon a book called Attached. And this book I got so into. I think my ex-boyfriend and I were already broken up at the time. We did kind of an on-again, off-again thing for a little while. And I think during one of those off-again times, I found this book. I think I was just really desperate to understand what went wrong, why we had to break up. And this book explained so much. I can't remember now, but I imagine I went Googling on Google, needy girlfriend, cold boyfriend, or something. I don't know. And anyway, I discovered that my attachment style was anxious and he was avoidant, or, at least from what I experienced and what I kind of witnessed, that's what I gathered. And we were in what is called the anxious-avoidant trap. I felt safest and most loved when we were very connected and we prioritized each other and our quality time together a lot. But for him, he was not as into deep conversations or making commitments as I was. We lived together, and yet I still felt like there was so much distance. So I felt personally comforted by finding out what my attachment style was and that there wasn't really anything necessarily wrong with it, but learning more about myself and what I needed to be careful of, and how my partner at the time was basically objectively a bad option for me. Not saying he was bad for everyone, but there's a different kind of partner that would be able to understand him and kind of balance things out with him more, and also the same for me. And of course, in my marriage now, I'm honestly still pretty anxiously attached, and my husband is much more secure. And I've really seen how that helps to just balance everything out, how we can both work together and bring closeness and safety to the relationship. So anyway, this topic is something I personally am very passionate about, and I love talking about, and I love sharing it with others. And if you're wondering where your attachment style comes from, typically it's assumed that it comes from the bond you shared with your parents, especially your mother. If you've ever taken a Psychology 101 class, usually attachment theory is mentioned when talking about these experiments with mothers and their babies. And in these experiments, the babies are watched to see how they react when their mother leaves, and then also how they react once she returns. But your attachment style isn't only determined by your upbringing with your parents. It can be impacted by other close relationships in your life too. And usually the next kind of super bonded, super close relationship in our lives after the one that we had with our parents as kids, when we grow into adults, that next relationship would probably be the one that you have with your romantic partner. So of course, those relationships can shape your attachment style and behavior too. So if you've had pretty healthy, drama-free relationships and you tend to break up with exes amicably, that will help your attachments to be more secure. But on the other hand, if you've been betrayed a lot or you've experienced some trauma in your romantic relationships or while dating, love might start to seem a bit scarier and not really so safe anymore, then you may struggle with some insecure attachment, right? So I mentioned before really briefly 3 different attachment styles. There are essentially 3 basic types of attachment, but there are others too, and the names are sometimes changed a bit depending on where you're reading or where you're researching. But keeping it simple for our episode today and following what I learned way back in college, there are 3 basic types. I want to start talking about secure attachment first. Of these 3 types, that's the first one I want to talk about. And I don't really want to treat secure attachment like it's the only normal or healthy attachment, but it is the most common, with somewhere around 60% of the population falling into this category of attachment. Going back to that psychology experiment with the babies and their mothers, this would be the attachment style where the baby sees mom leaving and they start to cry and get upset because the baby needs mom. They trust mom. They have a strong connection to mom. But when mom comes back, the baby quickly feels safe and secure again and can just kind of go on with life. Of course, you're not a baby. So how this might look for adults, especially in dating, is that if you're secure, then you're open to partners. You view romantic relationships positively. It's easy to trust your partner and you trust that they will love you. People who are securely attached don't really have much anxiety about their relationship, or they don't really worry about not being able to trust their partner or if their partner truly loves them. This doesn't mean that they never feel hurt or they never question their relationship, but for someone with a secure attachment, if they're hurt, they can express that to their partner. They don't typically go hot and cold, or they don't try to play games to get their partner's attention. They typically just express what's bothering them and communicate about it. They feel pretty comfortable depending on somebody else and opening up, being vulnerable. But if a partner takes that for granted or takes advantage of them, they can probably come to the decision to just, break up. And just like for anyone else, that breakup would probably still hurt even if you're securely attached. You're hurt to let go of that attachment. But they are able to bounce back and kind of gain some perspective. Usually, if you're securely attached, once you've reached a point of commitment with somebody else, you take that commitment really seriously and you do try to work to maintain it. But if you have space away from each other or you have kind of independence in your relationship, that's okay too. And it doesn't really feel like a threat to the relationship or something that you need in order to escape the relationship. I would say that if someone is securely attached, often they have that same approach to friendships too, and they might be an extrovert or someone who really enjoys meeting new people, going out, going to parties. Not always, but often, because generally they see other people in a positive way and they see other people as being trustworthy. But for securely attached people, if you do break that trust, that's on you, and they might distance themselves from you a little bit. Now, after hearing that, maybe you feel like that's you, which is great because secure partners can bring a lot of balance and reason to relationships and relationship problems. But maybe it doesn't sound so much like you. Maybe you've got a little more baggage. Maybe you have more relationship hangups, and you're not alone. Really, if you're listening to this, it's probably because you have some questions about relationships, right? You don't have it all figured out. It might not always come so easily to you. And I can relate. Like I said before, even I have an anxious attachment style. So that's the next attachment style that I want to talk about, anxious attachment. If you're anxiously attached, you may worry that you're too needy or too clingy, but at the end of the day, your needs are your needs. You care a lot about relationships. You think about your relationship a lot. You might even worry about it a lot. And relationship conflict totally throws anxiously attached partners off. And even after the conflict seems to be settled and maybe apologies were already made, they are probably still thinking about that fight for a while. Or later, they might look back to that fight as kind of evidence that there are cracks in their relationship. Everyone needs attention. Everyone deserves attention in their relationship. But if you're anxiously attached, you are very aware that you need attention. And you are very aware if you're not getting enough of it. You may even do some kind of unhealthy things to try to get attention or to feel loved. You may start a lot of arguments, or you may avoid being direct about your needs, and instead you might try to kind of communicate your needs in more indirect ways. You may even stay in an unhealthy relationship because you just hope that the other person will change. And when that hope starts to unravel, you will probably contemplate breaking up, maybe even threaten to break up, but still may find yourself actually staying in the relationship for a long time. But when your partner is there and you feel loved, everything feels right. Everything feels good. You love when you can be open and affectionate with your partner. That's like the ultimate reward for anxiously attached people. And even though anxiously attached partners may seem, to be blunt, kind of crazy, they're not. It's just like the system that helps them to detect threats is in overdrive when it comes to their relationships. They are very sensitive to changes and the details in their relationship. They may even start to notice some little detail or something has changed and they need an explanation for why. So maybe if their partner has become busier lately, they need to understand why, and they need that reassurance that they're not just being rejected. They're very good lovers, and they can bring a lot of depth and closeness to a relationship. But they understand that relationships take continual effort and work. And usually for those who are anxiously attached, they want a lot of connection and attention, but they're also totally up for giving that too. So basically, if you give someone who's anxiously attached a lot of love, then they are so happy to return the favor. If you're anxiously attached, you're probably also a great listener, very compassionate, and truly value your relationships, even sometimes to a fault. Almost the opposite of this is the third attachment style I want to talk about. So we've talked about secure, anxious, and then number 3 is avoidant attachment. Now, for those who are avoidant, based on the name, you can probably guess that they avoid deep intimacy and they're uncomfortable with vulnerability. They are highly independent and private, and they don't like the idea of being interdependent. Like, they want to see themselves and their partner as two totally different people who aren't really responsible for each other's well-being. I mean, to an extent, that could be a healthy way to live, but even in the case that an avoidance partner is having a really bad day or dealing with just like a really emotional time, that might be too overwhelming for the avoidant partner to kind of step in and be supportive. This doesn't mean that they just hate relationships and they just want to be single. Nearly everyone has a natural need to connect with others. But if you have an avoidant attachment style, once you do have somebody close to connect with, you might quickly find that you actually really want some space again. It's kind of a grass is always greener problem. So if you're avoidant in your relationship, you might miss your partner or crave company when you don't have them around. But then once they're back around, once you kind of get that connection again, you don't really know what to do sometimes. It might just feel like too much pressure. You might feel smothered quite quickly. And if you're avoidant, it's probably easy to also find flaws in other people and kind of use those flaws as a reason to not get too close or maybe even eventually break up with them. It might kind of seem like no one is ever really good enough for you. This might sound like you, or this might sound like someone you've dated. I mentioned at the top of this episode that I used to be in the anxious-avoidant trap, right? I'm anxious, so I'll stay attached and just hope that things will work out because leaving the person I'm with is super scary, and I keep hoping that with my commitment, the other person will eventually change and be super committed too. But then back when I was in college, my partner was avoidant. And they pulled away. When I came closer, they pulled away. They seemed to have like an emotional off switch, which would hurt me so much because for anxiously attached people, we need that reassurance that we're loved. So when we don't get the kind of affection or care that we need, like even just some simple words or actions to show that you've still got my back. If you are kind of cold when I need that, if you're anxiously attached, like the anxiety is just going to go up, 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 up. Like it really is a trap, where these two people, anxious and avoidant people, are just opposites. I'm getting more anxious while they're disengaging and shutting off. I'm needing consistency while they go hot and cold. I need quality time to feel connected while they get irritable with too much pressure put on them to connect with me. They need space. They need more room to breathe. Anxiously attached people will be patient with avoidance. They'll keep holding out and trying. And if you're anxiously attached, then this might sound like you, and maybe that's why you've had some kind of experience with an avoidant partner, because you just kept on hoping that it would work out and you just remained really patient and kind of loyal to them. But maybe you keep running into these types on Tinder or Bumble or at bars or wherever you might be dating. Maybe you keep running into these avoidant attached people. And you're wondering why. Why do I keep meeting these people? Why do I keep dating these people who seem to not even want anything serious? Well, you're not crazy. You probably really are meeting these people a lot if you're out there dating. And there's actually some reasons why. So first, avoidant people have a hard time staying in relationships. They break up a lot and they move through different partners often, and they also stay single longer. And they also, too, may just prefer more casual dating, and they get a little bit commitment phobic. So all this is to say that avoidant people make up a large fraction of the dating pool out there. So if you're meeting a lot of these people, or if you think that you're meeting a lot of these people, like, it's not all in your head. There really are a lot of them out there. And in contrast to avoidant people, securely attached people find relationships to be relatively easy, and they embrace connection, they enjoy being in a relationship, and they have just more of the tools to maintain a healthy, balanced relationship without breaking up so quickly or changing partners a lot. So you're less likely to find the securely attached people out there when you're dating because, well, quite frankly, they're probably already coupled up. And another point, too, is that avoidants don't date other avoidants. It's super rare because two people who have an avoidant attachment style will probably just keep the other one at arm's length, and it's hard to ever get this kind of relationship going. It's hard to form any kind of commitment when both people basically don't want a strong commitment. So that kind of leaves those who have an avoidant attachment style to pursue or be pursued by securely or anxiously attached people. And securely attached people could work with someone who's avoidant, but I would say a lot of people who are secure might get a bit frustrated or confused by someone who's avoidant, and they might just say, like, this isn't right, this isn't healthy, I deserve better, and they might eventually break it off. But it's typically the anxiously attached people, like myself, with one of my ex-partners, who continue to stick around because we really cherish romantic relationships. We need that connection. And I mean, we need deep connection, but even an unpredictable connection is better than nothing for us. I mean, our relationship anxiety tells us so anyway. It's not really true, but we tend to stick with these people rather than break it off and be alone. And in that way, it's kind of addictive, actually, this anxious avoidant trap. It's kind of addictive, and it's a hard addiction to break. Even if the avoidant partner is feeling smothered, they might also feel like they have quite a bit of power, and they can be the one to control when they get close or when they pull away. But if they try to do this, if someone who's avoidant tries to do this with someone who's securely attached, that securely attached person will probably get kind of fed up. If they do that with another avoidant person, they might be kind of competing in a way and just like butting heads. So the anxious avoidant trap is really easy to stay in for a long time, even though these partners are really unlikely to ever give the other one what they really want. And that brings me to something I wanted to touch on, which is who is compatible or incompatible. I see all the time these days people turning to astrology or different personality quizzes to see like what their type is and who they match best with. And that can be fun sometimes, especially with personality tests. Actually, some of those can be really helpful. But for sure, we shouldn't forget about our attachment compatibility. So to put it simply, when it comes to compatibility, having one secure partner can be a relationship lifesaver. Thank all the securely attached people out there. Thank their parents or their past relationships or whatever helped shape them to be secure. Because if you put a securely attached person with an anxious person, the secure one will respond to the anxious partner's needs, hopefully without any judgment, and just offer that reassurance. And this builds trust and a feeling of safety over time for the anxiously attached one. And a secure person with an avoidant person, the secure partner is more likely to respect the boundaries and need for space and privacy that the avoidant partner wants compared to the anxiously attached people out there. And of course, two securely attached people, that's two sides who are probably pretty good at communication and being open to vulnerability and giving to the other person. So they can make a really good team who works together well and can grow together and be there to give to each other when the other person has some need, right? This doesn't mean that just because you're secure, though, you're super simple and always flexible about everything, because you might still have some of your own unique needs or preferences that are, important to you. And so any partner, regardless of their attachment style, any partner who can't understand or respect that just isn't right for you. But then if we look at a relationship without any secure partner, especially looking at matching anxious and avoidant, like I said before, their needs are so conflicting. It's very hard to work out this kind of relationship. It's not impossible, and in just a minute I'll talk about how to potentially change your attachment style. But if you carry on without any help or any attempt at change, it is really hard to have a thriving relationship when you mix anxious and avoidant. And like I said before, two avoidant people might just find themselves like competing a lot for control, or they might find themselves just pushing each other away more and more. And this kind of pattern makes it really hard to create much emotional intimacy and connection, and you need that to maintain a long-term relationship. Just because someone is avoidant doesn't mean that they want an empty relationship. It's just that it's hard for them to maintain a constant feeling of closeness and openness with, somebody else. And finally, if we look at two anxiously attached people together, this kind of relationship can work because both people will probably be highly invested in the relationship. They'll be able to understand each other and each other's needs. But the one pitfall of this is that anxiously attached people, when their anxiety is activated, they often don't react in the most healthy ways. So they might start to play games or start arguments or jump to conclusions, and they might start to get suspicious of their partner and look for potential issues or reasons why they can't trust the other person. So when you have two people doing that, they are likely to have a relationship that has a lot of arguments, a lot of explosive fights, a lot of emotion, and probably a lot of big talks to clear the air all the time. And they might also find themselves trying to kind of one-up each other in who is more hurt. So one person might bring up some issue and the other person might be like, well, that was really hurtful for me too. Let me tell you all about it. And they might find themselves stuck in these kind of conflicts a lot. Truthfully, I know this as someone with this attachment style. It can be hard when you're feeling desperate for a need to get met, to also be able to give to your partner's needs at the same time. So when you're in that state where there's something that you really, really need, you're kind of feeling a little shaky in your relationship for whatever reason, and then your partner, they have some need too, or they have some kind of feeling of anxiety too, it's really hard to be able to give to the other person when you already have something about you that doesn't feel like it's totally fulfilled. So two anxious people might always be thinking of their own needs and what they want their partner to do. And with a secure person, that secure person might be like, okay, yeah, sure. You need me to listen to you while you talk about your day? Okay, no problem. Or, you feel like I've been too busy for you lately? All right, let's plan a date night. But if you have two anxious people, no one is there to respond practically and rationally. So that's something to just keep in mind if you combine two anxious types. Let's take a quick break to talk about onlinetherapy.com. They offer super convenient sessions with a professional therapist that fits your schedule and lifestyle from wherever you are. For me, living in Tokyo, I've realized it's nearly impossible to find budget-friendly therapists, but onlinetherapy.com has affordable plans. Plus, you can snatch 20% off when you first sign up using the link in the show description. The therapists at onlinetherapy.com aren't just there to listen, but to help you change your behavior and your life, using live online chats, messages, worksheets, and much more to keep you on track. So head to this episode's show description to get started with online therapy and get a 20% discount off your first month. With a lot of what I've said in this episode, it probably sounds like securely attached people are the ideal. I wanted to point out that there are some good points to those who are anxious or avoidant too, and they are just as worthy of love as anyone else. For the anxious attachment style, they are very good at breathing passion and meaning and romance into a relationship. I mean, they can make a relationship feel like a dream, very loving and connected, and because they're so sensitive, they can keep the relationship on track and be aware of when the relationship is being neglected. It's unlikely that you would just grow apart gradually from someone who is anxiously attached because they will notice and they'll talk about it with you and probably try to reconnect and help save the relationship. And avoidant partners can be helpful in maintaining independence. They will welcome you having your own time and your own hobbies and your own identity, and they probably won't try to limit your options. If you have a busy lifestyle or you spend a lot of time away from your partner, someone who is avoidant probably won't complain about it. But with the strengths of anxious and avoidant people, there are also some habits and behaviors definitely worth changing too. If you're wondering if your attachment style can change, it can. It's not set in stone, and it can be reactive to the kind of bonds and partnerships that you experience throughout your life. You can become more secure, and even for those who are already secure, no one is perfect. There are always more skills to improve on. I mean, basically, becoming a more secure person and partner is what I try to help you with in every episode or anything that I put out. Working on clear, direct, honest communication is a great start. Listening to each other rather than jumping to conclusions and making assumptions can also really help. And having a curiosity about your relationship and even about yourself is the first step to becoming more secure. Because when you think you already know everything, whether it be that you are thinking anxiously and you're drawing your own picture of what kind of threatening thing is happening, and then swiftly reacting without really questioning if your fears and your doubts and anxieties are true, or if you're avoidant and you fail to question why you're disengaging, or if your partner really is smothering you. Basically, when you think you already know everything there is to know and you don't pause to look at your own thought patterns and your own reactions, when you're spending more time just projecting than you are actually asking questions, it's really hard to build security. If you're anxious, you have to start to watch just with curiosity. Just watch your fears when they bubble up. If you're avoidant, same thing. Your fears probably aren't the same as they are for anxiously attached people, but you have fears too of getting hurt, of not being able to provide enough for somebody else, maybe disappointing them, or maybe it's your fear of losing yourself, or your fear of revealing too much. For anxious people, your biggest fear is being left or betrayed. You fear being forgotten about and abandoned. These fears are real to you and they're heavy, but those fears don't determine what happens. Your reactions to the fears do. So changing the reactions gets you closer to changing your attachment style, or at least improving the parts you struggle with. And like I said, every episode, everything I put out there on social media or any kind of resources, everything, all of that can help you to become more secure today. I loved diving into this topic and reminding myself of some really important information that is really basic, but not a lot of people are talking about attachment styles lately. I feel like today's culture is pretty attachment phobic. Attachment kind of seems like a dirty word. Maybe collectively we're becoming a more avoidantly attached generation. What do you think? I think today, especially for women, we have a lot of options. We have a lot more options than we used to have, which is such a good thing. But sometimes with anything in life, career, where to live, what to study, and who to date, we may get a bit lost in choosing which one thing we want to commit to. So I don't really think we're actually getting more avoidant, but I think relationships today aren't as prized as they used to be. I think, quite frankly, they're not as necessary anymore to be successful. So it's easier to cut people off who just don't vibe well with us, which is a good thing. But sometimes I wonder if people aren't getting to know each other deeply before making those decisions. And I realize saying this might sound like it contradicts some of the other things that I've said before. And really, it doesn't. I've talked before about deal breakers and things like that. Have your deal breakers in mind. It's okay to be kind of picky. You don't need to waste your time on anyone who does anything that goes against what you need. If someone does do one of your deal breaker kind of actions, you don't need to give them another chance. You don't need to wait around for them to change. But like I said before, stay curious, stay open. Every relationship involves attachment. Every relationship requires love and care. So don't cut yourself off from experiencing that. I mentioned a little before in my episode on dating, a previous episode that I did about dating and running into F-boys a lot when you're dating. I mentioned in that episode that dating is work and relationships are work. You can choose to avoid it because it feels like work, but when you start to look at it as being good work, productive work, like going to the gym or chasing your dream job, it becomes worthwhile. So you have to be open to getting hurt, at least to some extent, and you have to be open to being in an attached relationship in order to receive the love and connection and fulfillment. So I feel like these days it's basically trendy to be single and to kind of show how totally independent you are, which is great. And I think being single can be great, but being attachment phobic or looking down on relationships or saying things like dating sucks, love sucks, I hate men, online dating is killing me, it's gonna keep you stuck. And if you feel stuck about your attachment style, or if you want to learn more about attachment styles and how they show up in dating and love, I recommend you go grab that book that I mentioned called Attached. If you want to get super into attachment theory, but in a really easy to digest and understand kind of way. That's what I've got for this episode. Go to the show description for more information from today's episode and what I have going on over at brieschmidt.com. Thanks for listening, bad girlfriends. Until next time.